If I understood the ledger correctly, in July of 2008, Mr. Wogan was paid $35,000 in one check for 2 different jobs. How is that not exceeding $20,000?
Well, because it was 2 different jobs. I mean, he happened to submit his invoices to us, and we, instead of processing 2 checks, we processed 1.
But then the project, the downtown revitalization project, which is the fund that paid all 6 invoices, is from the same TIF program.
From the same TIF fund, that's correct.
That's where I'm having difficulty understanding how it's a separate job when it's the same project. It was a demolition of downtown buildings, and the work on the buildings was the same regardless of the buildings. It was paid from the same fund. So Elliott and Wood, for example.
I think the same fund is not the leading factor. The source from which the money is paid to me is not the issue. It may be the same, say, with Elliott and Wood doing an intersection improvement at First and Locust, and 1 month later doing an intersection improvement at 4th and Lincoln. Those are 2 separate jobs.
Okay, well, I was going to use that as an example, and that's what I'm having.
Those are 2 separate jobs and 2 separate processes and 2 separate estimates and 2 separate engineering, those things. So, by using that as an analogy, the same thing in my view is what the issue is with the building demolition, separate building demolitions.
Well, I have a related question, and that is, why wouldn't the repairs have been bundled into the job? Because it appears that with each demolition, repairs were required afterwards. And I'm wondering, if this wasn't anticipated, or if it was, why it wasn't bundled into the whole acquisition and demolition process.
Because all the acquisitions, all the acquisitions and demolitions occurred at different parts throughout late 07 and through 08. They weren't all done at once.
But how about the repairs to the buildings after the demolitions that had to be considered separately? Because I'm not understanding that part.
You had this wall exposed to the elements. We wanted to be responsible to that property owner and make sure that we didn't have any weather problems or rain leaking in. We wanted to address them as soon. I guess what we could have done, and I would not have advised it even back then, is we could have demolished building 1 in December of 07, building 2 in March of 08, building 3 in August of 08, but wait until September, October of 08 to do all 3. I don't think that would have been responsible to the adjacent property, whose building wall is now exposed.
Okay, were these repairs anticipated at all?
No. You don't know until you take the building.
Okay, so what you're saying is that there were almost $53,000 in unanticipated repairs to these buildings, or I'm thinking that with the buildings as old as they are, and some of them like maybe leaning up against each other, and some of them maybe connected in some way, that there would have been.
No, it's hidden. There's no way you can know. If, for example, we took one building down and there was a big plaster sheeting still affixed to the exposed wall. That took an entirely different treatment to address than, say, another building that we tore down where it's almost to the extent where that exposed wall probably should have been tucked away before the building we demolished was ever built. I mean, it's just, you don't know. How the walls are tied, certainly you do a structural engineer, but what's between 2 sheets of paper, you don't know until one sheet of paper is down.
Okay, so you knew there would be something, you just didn't know what.
Oh, we knew there'd be something, whether or not it needed to be repaired, we had no idea.
Okay. Could you describe how it ended up that Mr. Vogan got these jobs? I mean, did it come from, whose idea was it, and who approved it?
Well, at the end of the day, the approval was mine.
Okay.
Okay. Our public works department was responsible for the demolition work and the resultant restoration of the adjacent walls. We knew of various masonry contractors in town, some of whom, by the way, and Rick would have to tell you the names, chose not even to submit a quote. Others that did, Victor was one of them. And again, remember, and the council may wish to change that, and that's fine, but there's no prohibition against council members from doing the work. As I mentioned in the press release, our intentions were good. Do this at the lowest cost possible and do so within the law. Reverse this. What if I chose not to hire Vic and went with a higher quote? I think I'd have been criticized for doing that too, doing a job more expensive than otherwise could have been done. So you weigh all that, and at the end of the day I said, well, one, is this within the law? Yes. Two, is it the lowest price? Yes. I made that decision.
If you
Now,
had,
I know there's a sentiment of that perhaps council members shouldn't do the work. And that I think will be debated, and the council can change it. But at the end of the day, I wanted to save the taxpayer money. That was my intention. And in 6 of the 8 instances, Vic was a low quote. Because it's 2 other ones that he was not doing.
Okay, he was quoted as saying that he's got dozens of quotes, and he was only successful in 6. Is that accurate?
I don't know about that. I know there was 8 jobs in 08. I can't think of any other quotes we have solicited from them in other jobs. Yeah, there couldn't have been dozens of masonry type jobs. Okay, anything else on that?
Just to summarize as far as the different projects, so that's determined by the time the projects are done and the types. That was the instance here.
And some of these were at different locations, not all at the same location.
Now, all are at different locations, and one could argue except for one. First of all, it was the McCabe's exposed wall at McCabe's, the exposed wall at First and Lincoln, and then with a pass-through. Now, I talked with Rick about this when we were on vacation. One building was taken down, but there was 2 walls. Now, we didn't say, okay, let's do different projects. I'm trying to recollect this. We were in the process upon demolition of what we're going to do with this pass-through. Not, never mind the whole issue about the overhead and the heating and the lighting and this. What are we going to do with these exposed walls? We went from building up brand new brick walls to cover the old brick walls to there's a local manufacturer in Sycamore. We even talked to them at length about building prefab insulated walls and erecting them in place to keeping the walls as is, restore them, and provide the so-called vintage look. And if I recall correctly, one of the 2 walls needed more immediate attention before we can even make those other alternative decisions, and so we addressed it. Meanwhile, we're debating all this other stuff that I just described, and finally concluded, no, let's keep, because the cost of the prefab wall, and the cost of new bricks, and all that, just wasn't going to work. So then we got a quote for the second of the 2 walls.